Hey everyone. I thought it would be beneficial to read a little bit to you from the color book, which is titled Color, a Workshop for Artists and Designers, third edition, David Hornung. And I'm going to read a little bit about what we've learned so you have kind of a more academic understanding of what we've been doing. And then we're going to talk about saturation. And I'm going to show you how to create a saturation study. So I'm going to read starting in part 2. This is going to skip pages 12 of part 1 to part 2, which is the first principles. If one says red, the name of a color, and there are 50 people listening, it can be expected that there will be 50 reds in their minds, and one can be sure that all these reds will be very different. And this is a quote by Josef Albers. The structure of color. Most people are aware that colors have more than one visible quality. This is apparent because color names, such as red, are frequently coupled with adjectives, such as fiery red, cherry red, blood red, flame red. And these expressions reflect the fact that colors have characteristics not adequately represented by a simple color name. In fact, all colors possess 3 distinct attributes that account for their appearance. Each can be manipulated independently either by color mixing or by altering the context in which the color appears. These attributes are hue, value, and saturation. Those are the 3 concepts of color that we are working on right now. We've learned about the color spectrum and the different hues that are on the color wheel, which are considered prismatic colors. I sent you a video on the grayscale, which shows you value from dark to light. And the next study that I'm going to do is a study on saturation, which is simply taking red. We're going to take red and we're going to add different percentages of color of white to red and red orange. So for instance, we will have 100% red in the top column. The next section will be 80% red and 20% red orange. The next column, column 3, will be 60% red and 40% red orange. The next column will be 40% red and 60% red orange. The 5th column will be 20% red and 80% red orange. And then the last column will be 100% red orange. And you're going to add white at varying degrees to each of these colors. So your 100% red will have 20% white added to it. Your combination of 80 and 20, red and red orange, will have 20% white. Your 60-40, red and red orange, will have 20%. Your 40% red and 60% red orange will have 20% white, and so forth. And each of these increments, as you go down the left-hand side, will have more white added to it at increasing percentages. So from 100% red, 20% white, 25% white, 35% white, 45% white, 60% white, and then 80% white. Okay. And it has taken me forever. I'm not really good at measuring, so forgive my presentation on this. So I've created it's an 8, I believe it's 8 inches long and about 7 across. Let me see what my sheet says. So it's actually 6 by 7. But I added the information to the top and to the side to remind me. And then you'll want to block this off with your paper. But we're not going to do that just yet. I'm probably going to just talk and read a little bit to you about what we've been learning, and then I'll do a second video with the saturation study. So, hue, value, and saturation. Hue, the topic of hue. When we refer to a color on the spectrum by its name, we talk about its hue. The spectrum is a hue continuum that stretches from infrared to ultraviolet and passes through recognizable color zones. Theoretically, at the heart of every color zone is the pure, true version of each hue. But because each zone contains an infinite number of variations, there can be no determinate center to any hue zone. Most of us carry a mental image of individual hue identities, especially for simple colors such as red and blue. But this conception is personal. A true essential blue would lie somewhere between cyan, a blue that leans towards green, and ultramarine, which is biased toward violet. But its precise position is impossible to determine. So here's an example of the hue continuum organized in a circle, okay, with black in the center. The primary triad is a fundamental color concept that, in addition to being useful, has an almost mythic allure. In theory, by intermixing 2 or 3 of the colors of the true primary triad, any color can be achieved, while the primary colors themselves are unattainable through mixing. As children, we are taught that the primary hues are red, yellow, and blue, but strictly speaking, red and blue are not primary colors because red can be made by combining magenta and yellow, and blue can be made by combining magenta and cyan. The correct primary triad has, since the late 19th century, been determined to be cyan, magenta, and yellow. These 3 colors are truly singular and incapable of being mixed from others. They also combine to make the broadest range of visible tones. That's why cyan, magenta, and yellow plus black are the basis of 4-color printing. So when you print from a printer, those are the colors that you would buy for your ink. And I'm not going to read any more about printing and those colors. We're going to talk now about color temperature. Colors can be classified by temperature, either cool or warm. And I'm going to let me show you an example of that. And this might be another study. I'm just going to keep creating studies for y'all to work on. And then we can decide if you want to do those studies again at the class. So that's the color wheel. And then this line of colors here are warm. So I have red violet, which is your alizarin crimson, true red, red orange, orange, yellow orange, and then yellow. So these you have all created, okay? Then warm colors would be the alizarin crimson plus yellow, your red plus yellow, your red orange plus yellow, your orange plus yellow, your yellow orange plus yellow, and then your yellow plus yellow, which would be 2 different yellows that you're mixing. And then additionally, these would be warm colors, your warm colors plus white. So you're adding white to your red violet, white to your red orange, white to your orange, white to your yellow orange, and white to your yellow. And then below this are considered cool colors. So you have your yellow orange, green, blue-green, blue, blue-violet, and violet. And then these have been mixed with white to create even cooler colors. So your yellow-orange has been mixed with white, green has been mixed with white, your blue-green has been mixed with white, your blue with white, and your blue-violet with white, and your violet with white. Okay? And this is where you start mixing colors to create different shadings and hues for whatever it is that you're painting. So this would be a warm and cool study that I can show you in another video. Here down at the bottom is another value range, the value of light to dark. And this study here at the top is another saturation study using complementary colors. And I'm not going to go into detail about that. That's a little bit more complex. So I'm going to read a little bit more, and then I'm going to close this video out, upload it, send it, and then do another one with the saturation studies. Okay, so color temperature. We talked about cool and warm. While temperature is an important aspect of color, it is not an independent structural attribute as are hue, value, and saturation. Temperature is an aspect of hue. Cool colors run approximately from green to blue, violet, and warm colors extend from yellow, green to red, violet. Colors on the boundaries of these ranges can seem more ambiguous in temperature than those like blue and orange, which lie near the center. The appearance of temperature, like all aspects of color, is contingent upon neighboring colors. Yellow-green, for example, can look warm when seen against violet, but cooler when placed against yellow-orange. Okay, so here is another continuum of your cooler colors from green to violet, and then your warmer colors from yellow, green to red. Okay. And then here's an example of cool temperature can be influenced by a neighboring color. So purple and green and yellow. And then here are the value continuums and an 11-step grayscale. And that's the 11-step grayscale I asked you to try to work on at home. Okay. At some point, we're going to start mixing black and white and gray to create muted colors. Even within a single hue, we can perceive a shift in temperature. Yellow, for example, is considered warm when viewed against the entire color spectrum. But within the yellow zone, as it moves away from orange and toward green, its temperatures seem to cool. Hence, light yellow appears cooler than deep yellow. Likewise, scarlet or flame red is warmer than crimson. Blues are more evasive. Although a temperature shift from cyan to ultramarine is clear, which blue is cool and which warm might seem ambiguous. Ultramarine is biased in the direction of violet, and cyan is biased towards green. Violet being cooler than green suggests that ultramarine should be regarded as a cooler color. So a little bit about value, and this was that grayscale study that I suggested you try at home. Value refers to the luminosity or the relative lightness or darkness of a color. It is determined by the amount of light a color reflects, regardless of hue. In Color, a textbook of modern chromatics, published in 1904, Ogden Rood explains that the more light a color reflects, the more luminous it is. Of the pure colors, yellow is the most luminous and violet is the least luminous. A pure white object would have the greatest luminosity, while a densely black object, such as black velvet, would have almost none. As with the hue continuum, which is the color spectrum, that you ladies created right there. So as with the color spectrum, the hue continuum, the value continuum contains infinite variations. The full range of values is often simplified into a progressive series of tones called grayscale, and that was your grayscale study. So you have value and you have tone. The tone of a color is based on its luminosity, whether it's light or dark. Okay. Saturation. The relative purity of a color is known as saturation. The more a color resembles the clear, fully illuminated colors seen in a prism or a rainbow, like your color wheel, the more saturated it is said to be. At first, it may be difficult to distinguish saturation from value, but in fact, the two qualities are completely independent of each other. For example, I'm going to show you an example. For example, the square that is lighter in value, a pale yellow, is less saturated than its green neighbor. So this is saturated, less saturated. Whereas the one below it, the opposite is true. This yellow is more saturated and this one is less saturated. Okay. A saturation continuum can be created by intermixing two fully saturated complementary colors. So we're using red and red-orange, and then we're going to add white. For example, blue and orange. You can intermix blue and orange. So pure orange can be mixed with, pure blue can be mixed with orange to create a continuum. So these are all different continuums of different saturation levels. So you've got orange to blue. You have a fully saturated prismatic. This is your color wheel. Then these are muted colors here, chromatic grays, 6 achromatic grays, and then 3 levels of saturation on a blue-orange continuum. And again, I'm just giving you this information so you'll have a little more info about saturation, although I can understand that without doing this, that it would become kind of confusing. So I hope that you'll consider getting these books because I think they'll really add to your learning experience. All right, color range. Any group of colors can be assessed in terms of the range of its hue, its value, and its saturation. When doing so, we apply the terms broad, moderate, and narrow. And one of the last studies that we do is going to be a study on broad hue, moderate hue, narrow hue, broad value, moderate value, narrow value, and broad saturation, moderate saturation, and narrow saturation. And you're going to mix all of those together in a fun project that will hopefully provide you with a better understanding. The strip of 10 colors that I'm going to show you has a broad hue range because it includes all 6 primary and secondary hues. So that's the one up at the top here. Its value range is also broad in that it spans almost the entire value scale from dark to light. The saturation range is likewise broad because we see prismatic colors, muted colors, and chromatic grays. In contrast to, from that figure to the one below it, which I'll show you in a minute, they share identical hues, and the saturation range is also both broad. But in the one below it, the value range is narrow. All the colors are located in the middle of the grayscale using, oh my goodness. So all of the colors are located in the middle of the grayscale. So that's their saturation range. And this creates a dramatic shift in one attribute, value contrast, and alters the characteristic of the group. So this is the difference with these having the mid-range of the dark gray added to them. You'll discover in this color workshop, hue, value, and saturation can be manipulated together or independently through color mixing or by altering color context. All right, a little bit about the color wheel again. Color theorists since the early 18th century have found it useful to organize the color spectrum in a circular configuration or color wheel. The color wheel provides a mental map of hue distribution that the artist or designer can call up while imagining color relationships in the abstract. But ideas about how essential hues should be arranged can vary. As we have seen, the visible color spectrum is a continuum with discernible zones, but no clearly marked divisions. Therefore, any attempt to map out hue relationships in discrete steps is only as correct as it can be practically applied. The two wheels most commonly used today are based on the two triads, red, yellow, and blue, which is the one that we created. And in my painting, in my color theory book, my color theory class, the wheel was consistent with the way that you all did it, with red, orange, yellow, orange, and so forth. But in my oil painting class, she did it in reverse. So I'm not sure why she did that. It really doesn't matter. It's just the spectrum of colors. All right, and then we're not going to talk about cyan, magenta, and yellow. Those are the for printing and graphic designing. And I guess that's about it for now. So I'll just leave it at that. This book goes on to talk a little bit more in the next chapter about color studies, paint, gouache, acrylic gouache, and different types of materials that you can use, and some other different studies. So I'm going to go ahead and it takes a while for me to convert this. If you haven't purchased this book, I highly recommend that you purchase this one and the other two that I suggested. And that's it for now. I was up late last night and I got up early this morning and went and did yoga. And so now I'm going to take this afternoon to work on some studies for y'all. And I'll just keep sending them to you. Watch them at your leisure. I don't want to completely inundate you with too much information, but I want you to have some things that you can work on at home. So have a great afternoon, and I'll be sending you the saturation study soon.